I am in a major dilemma and haven't been sleeping much due to what my boyfriend did. I've been dating my boyfriend for around 2 years now. We have had several petty fights before in which he usually does something where he shuts down completely. We have been to therapy over this. We have talked about things he can tell me in the middle of an argument like, hey, I need to take some time away from this, and he just never does this. Most of the time when we're in an argument, all he does is he will either walk out of my house, or sit in one place completely mute. I could be crying and screaming and he will just be completely mute staring at a wall. He knows just how badly this hurts me. I've told him over 100 times how badly it makes me feel, and quite literally makes me feel like I'm going crazy. This previous weekend, we got into an argument, and he got into his bed and refused to speak to me again, doing the silent treatment. I'm livid, because the thing that we were fighting about was pretty serious, and all he says is I don't want to talk about it and gets in bed. There's a back and forth petty fight where we're cutting the lights off and on, with him cutting them off in an attempt to get me to ignore the very serious conversation at hand, and him trying to cut off the lights so that he can go to sleep and not talk about the argument. I think in a normal argument this wouldn't have bothered me so much and I would have gave in, but this one was extremely severe of him doing some pretty hurtful stuff, so I didn't want to just shove it under the rug because he didn't want to talk about it. At this point I've tried everything to get him out of the bed to talk to me, and I'm pissed and ready to leave. I take his phone because I want to delete all of my personal revealing photos out of it, and he gets pissed and tells me to give him his phone back. I've never seen him pissed over me having his phone before and I'm immediately suspicious. I ask him what is in his phone that he's hiding from me, and this is when he loses his shit and throws his phone at me, and screams there's nothing in my fucking phone. I'm in shock at this, because I have really bad trauma from an abusive ex, so I just sit down in a chair in shock. He then gets up and keeps saying you need to get out, I want you out, and grabs my wrists and pulls me out of the bedroom. We're at the top floor in his house and he has the staircases where there's a bigger staircase at the bottom floor, a podium, and then a smaller staircase that leads to the second floor where we were. He pulls me to the top of the smaller staircase, and the whole time I'm screaming I'll leave, let me go, you're hurting me, and he says no you won't, you need to leave. I'm at the very top of the staircase and trying to get away because he's scaring me, and I lose my footing and fall down the mini staircase. The mini staircase is only about 4 stairs so it wasn't painful, but the shock of it all was the worst part. I immediately get up and run out of his house, and drive myself home. I have a very gruesome and extensive history of domestic violence. My first boyfriend who I dated for 3 years tried to drown me, and would frequently abuse and intimate assault me. The one time that I had to finally up and leave was when he had taken his cell phone and threw it as hard as he could at my head and gashed it open. I'll save you all the gory details because it got even worse, but that's just an example of what I went through for years. My boyfriend knows all of this, and he knows how traumatized I was. I do not know what to do. He has apologized over and over again, and told me how disgusting he feels, but I can't get over the feeling that I felt while all of it was happening. It makes me sick because the feeling felt all too familiar and I promised myself I'd never feel that feeling again. I understand people get pissed and might do something that they regret, but I'm scared that it'll happen again. He has set up a couples counseling session for this week, and has agreed to go to counseling for himself. I have also reached out to my therapist and I'm trying to get my flashbacks under wraps, but it's hard. Is this something that we can work through? Update: I spoke with my boyfriend and my therapist, who I visit on a weekly basis. Shout out to the Redditors who cared about that, and we came to a few conclusions. My boyfriend agreed that he is emotionally abusive and previously he was physically abusive. I also apologized for how I had yelled in the past reactions to emotional abuse that he had been putting me through. The thing is, we have had many talks about his mute behavior when in times of conflict. I would say close to 100 talks on why it's not okay and what you should say instead of going mute. We have been in therapy over the mute problem and I have worked on ways that I should approach conversations in a way that makes him not go mute. I've found out that no matter how I approach the conversation, 9 times out of 10 he will probably go mute, and it's not because his feelings are hurt. He admitted he does this, knowingly, and that was a huge step for us. He has never previously admitted it, only made excuses for his behavior and always promised to not do it again. I definitely lost my cool that night, but at no point did I ever scream at him to get him to talk to me. If you read my post, I said I could be screaming and crying and he still wouldn't talk. Screaming and crying as in crying over why he's not speaking to me when I'm obviously upset. It literally hurts me that much. I take full responsibility for my role in antagonizing him, but I don't think I appreciate some of the comments on this post who seemingly blame me for my boyfriend being physically abusive towards me. I understand you people are complete strangers on the internet, but I do encourage you to please be mindful of the things you say. One thing my previous abuser used to tell me was that I was the reason why he decided to drown me, choke me, or do any of the god-awful things he had done. I am to a point where it's easier to read through some of those things online, but I'm sure that if you did comment that on the wrong DV's survivors Reddit, that would likely send them into a spiral. I'm still unsure of my next steps from here because things are still fresh and I'm still processing, but I do encourage everyone to be kind and to be mindful of the things you post. Comment. Mo, you should not get over this. He became violent, this means you are in another violent relationship. I'm guessing your ex didn't start off with all the brutal attacks, it probably started with smaller stuff, so you know the dynamic well. You can't get over it because your Kill Bill alarm sirens are blaring because you are in yet another abusive relationship, just the physical abuse is in its very beginning stages. This is your experience speaking. It doesn't matter how many times he apologized, that's to be expected. That is part of the abuse cycle, the apologizing, the tears, the begging. I'm sure your ex did that too, at least at the start. Later it stops. Additionally, this relationship seems to make you your worst self. The screaming is not okay, you are being abusive too, only verbally. I will assume you are not like that normally, but sometimes we are simply not in a good enough place to be in a relationship. And sometimes a specific person just makes us our worst self, pulls out all the ugly from us. My mom used to be in a relationship like that, dunno why, but that dude just somehow seemed to make all the worst parts of her surface. She became more aggressive around him. It's best to stay away from people who resonate with us like that. The other comment on this post is blaming you when they shouldn't be at all. Taking his phone pales in comparison to what he's done. Throwing things at you and grabbing you and causing you to fall is all abusive behavior, point blank. Also, he's showing you by dismissing your feelings and your attempts at communication that it doesn't matter to him at all what you're feeling when you initiate these discussions. If I were you, I would not believe those apologies, it'll only get worse from here. Grabbing your wrists to control your body and throwing objects at you, it counts even if the object doesn't hit you, are literally precursors to future physical abuse. And then he pushed you down the stairs. It doesn't matter that it was only 4 steps and wasn't painful. That is fucking abusive. Please, I beg you not to go to counseling with this man. Psychologists highly recommend against going to couples therapy with your abuser. He will use counseling to confuse you, and trick you into thinking he's engaging. But soon enough, you'll find that instead of just stonewalling you during arguments, he'll use therapy terms to invalidate you and shut you down. Or maybe he shuts down BC. According to her own words, she is just as verbally abusive. Screaming at him, following him into his room and trying to force a conversation he already said he didn't want, repeatedly turning on the lights when he refused to speak with her. These are all abusive actions. She doesn't get a pass. Yes, it was wrong of him to turn to physical violence 100%, but she was the aggressive abuser well before he physically assaulted her. If someone refuses to argue with you, your options are to leave and dump that person. You have no more right to scream at someone, follow them around and demand they speak to you. You both seem very toxic for each other. While I don't like to jump to the breakup like many Redditors to over even the littlest thing, I am not sure this is a positive, life-giving relationship. Contrary to what people thinking, full-blown arguments are not healthy. It is healthy to disagree with your partner, but it is not healthy to have screaming matches that result in silent treatment or people storming out. It is one thing to disagree and say you can't talk about this right now and to go for a walk to clear your head. It's another thing to scream and then give the silent treatment. I've been married for a decade and with my husband a total of 17 years. We have disagreed at times, but we have never screamed at each other, grabbed each other in disagreement, or given the other person silent treatment. Story 2. Boyfriend embarrassed us by insisting to our friends that she opens her relationship while she recovers from surgery. Quick backstory. My friend, Ashley, has had a really bad couple of months. She's a gymnastic coach / PE teacher for kids and teenagers. And through a combination of wear and tear, and a bad fall she had during a session, she had to have surgery back in April on her back. She had to go back in October for a second operation. She's currently going through physical therapy to recover now. Over the weekend, our whole friend group went out to celebrate another friend's birthday at a local bar. One of our friends asked Ashley how her back was doing. She gave us an update that she was doing fine and it feels a lot better, but it still hurts doing things like getting in and out of bed as she recovers. So that brought up the discussion about how has back surgery affected her. At one point during the discussion, my boyfriend, Tyson, asked how it had affected their intimacy. Ash was caught off guard, but she answered. She said that they just haven't been able to do much because it was simply just too painful. So Tyson decides to double down on the awkwardness of asking that question, and ask if they have considered opening up their relationship. Adrian, Ash's partner, and Tyson aren't really friends. They know each other because Ashley and I know each other. And they're buddies with the other guys. Both Ashley and Adrian said no. Tyson claims he was drunk and that's why kept pushing the issue. But after they said no, he once again doubled down. Myself and others told him to drop it. He said it's a legitimate suggestion and it's not fair on Adrian. Adrian snapped at him that he wasn't going to go screw another woman because Ash can barely get out of bed. Tyson finally agreed to drop it. But the awkwardness was at the table. When we left, we got into an argument because he thinks he made a legitimate suggestion to a solution to their problem. He genuinely doesn't see how it's wrong to say if your girlfriend can't bang you, you should see other people in the meantime. My friends told me that the other guys said Adrian was actually furious when we left. He just didn't want to make a scene at the birthday party. He embarrassed us to our friend, Sam, whose birthday it was, and he embarrassed us to our friend with the injured back. How do I get him to apologize for being so rude to everyone over the weekend? Comment. You can't. You can't make him do anything. He's a grown man and did his own choices and doesn't see anything wrong with what happened. You can keep trying to talk to him, but he's not going to hear you or change his behavior. You can however salvage your sanity and friendships and walk away from him. They have been X'd out. If girlfriend breaks up, she still may not be admitted back in. Very rare to find partners okay with commenting on someone's sex life at an adult dinner party. If it was a swinger party, bridezilla/groomsman party or a frat party, alrighty then. How old is your boyfriend? Is he legal to drink? Because as everyone has said, you know your future, don't get sick or hurt. This mofo does not have your back, you are a placeholder until something better comes along. Good luck. He didn't embarrass us. He embarrassed himself and you will embarrass yourself if you stay with him. Him apologizing will do nothing, because decent people will see right through it. He's gross and now your friends know that. Why you want to stay with someone who just told on himself says a lot about you and your self-worth. I hope you start loving yourself. Good luck. They didn't have a problem and weren't looking for a solution, much less taking suggestions. Like everyone else said, he's basically said what he'll do if you ever become incapacitated in any way. His refusal to apologize is one thing, but there's so many other red flags here. You really need to ask yourself if this is a person you want to be with.